Welcome to What Would Sabrina Say? I'm Sabrina Dong, and I'm excited you're joining me today. In this podcast, I dive into mental health topics on relationships and overall well-being. With over 20 years of experience as a licensed clinical social worker, I share insights and invite expert guests who are passionate about making a positive difference. I started this podcast because I was frustrated with the often misleading or recycled information in social media involving self-help and the mental health field. My goal is to provide you with genuine, useful content that's educational and informative. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you find our conversations both enlightening and empowering. I'm glad you're here. Hi, and welcome. We have today Jessica Batres, and she is a social worker. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, Sabrina. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited for you to join us about such important topics. So the first one is talking about burnout and the importance of self-care and why we need to have self-care to transform our life and why it's so important. I think a lot of people these days practice forms of self-care as maybe it's a privilege or something nice to do once our big to-do list is completed. But so happy to have you on to talk about why it's so important to put ourselves first at times and what self-care looks like. So if you'd like to share a bit about yourself.
Yes. My name is Jessica. I run a private practice as a therapist. It's called Raíces Flourish. I work with individuals that have anxiety and depression, and I specialize with young adults that are also children of immigrants, a little bit like me. Second generation. I grew up trying to fit in the Canadian culture and trying to fit in my parents' culture. That had an impact on itself when we're trying to fit into two cultures. You might not feel like we fit in neither of them. And so as I grew up, as I found myself, I took a bit of both and invented my own culture, I guess, my own values. And we're talking about self-care. It is very important and it can be very hard because it's not something that was always taught to us. I think about my parents. They were immigrants. They were always working. They were always trying to survive. And so I didn't get to see what self-care looked like because they were always on the go. And so I learned to always be on the go as well.
Right. As a way of coping, as a way of life, right? And making that sacrifice where you grew up seeing that it's very much the household's focused around work. And providing for the family. So yes, I think many children whose families make the sacrifice to migrate to another country do experience that. And the expectations are set to work just as hard. And then that internal struggle of maybe some stigma around if you don't. You're seen as lazy or not working hard enough, or some cultures don't understand Western world around stress or depression. And so that can be hard as well, too, when we're juggling different cultures. So I wanted to talk firstly about, if you could share, Jessica, what self-care is and what that's all about, what that looks like.
So self-care is way of preservation, taking care of yourself, putting yourself first so that you can recharge and then keep going with whatever it is that you need to keep going, whether it's work, your family, carrying on with your body, and so on. But we often see self-care being commercialized nowadays, where self-care is the bubble bath, self-care is the gym, Pilates, yoga, self-care is the green smoothie. And that's just a part of what self-care is because they are important, but they're not the whole pie. I like to talk about self-care as a pie that has many different pillars. And so when we talk about self-care, we also want to talk about physical self-care, social self-care, mental, spiritual, financial, professional, environmental. There are all different components of self-care and they're all as important as the green smoothie or the bubble baths or the gym.
Right. So it's not necessarily a product, but looking at different aspects and parts of you as a self, as a whole, what nurtures you, what, your relationship is like with money, what you're having goals or plan around. Maybe it is enjoying and spending, or maybe it is saving for something long term. It's more around what do you need for physical or emotional health. Some people might be what nurtures them is being around others. Other people, it might be some downtime or alone time to read a good book. So it's exploring what that is. And it's great how you brought up about recharging ourselves. And I like to joke and look at the analogy. We're so quick to make sure our phone battery is charged, our cell phone, but we don't make sure we are nourished or our batteries charged, right? So every time, at night automatically, let's put the phone on the charger or when you get home from work. But for ourselves, we don't make sure our own battery, our own energy, our own, need to connect to others, spirituality is being nourished.
I love the analogy, with the phone and the battery, because it's something that we can all identify with. Like, we all need our phone to keep going. Like, it's almost like a body part for most of us at this point. And so, yes, it's almost like a sin to forget to charge your phone. Like, how am I going to function tomorrow if my phone is not charged? That's the first thing you're going to do in the morning if you forgot to charge it. And for us, like you said, if we think about self-care as recharging your battery, it's very common that we are going to keep going with the battery on red and signals like you need to recharge, and we might ignore them. And at some point, you will be depleted. Your body at some point will tell you, I don't have any battery percentage left. Like, you're done. And a lot of times when we talk about burnout, that's how people find out that their battery is dead. They end up at the hospital with high symptoms. They end up having to take time off work. They end up with high symptoms of anxiety, depression, or something else because they didn't take the time to recharge their battery. And like you said, it's not always priority or number one in our list. It's something that often gets pushed. It's almost if I get to, I'll do it. But it's not number one in your list. And it should be, because we can't keep giving or doing things with an empty cup or an empty battery.
Right. And it's really helpful to explain what are those symptoms, right, of burnout and what that looks like. Like you said, it can affect our immune system, frequent colds, right? Not being able to maybe heal faster like we're used to, feeling run down, fatigue, like you said, experiencing symptoms of low mood, low energy, anxiety, sometimes just kind of disconnecting, feeling yourself shut down emotionally, right? Or mentally drained, or feeling, sometimes people might share feeling numb or just flat, right? Not really happy, not really sad. So those are definitely some symptoms, headaches, stomach aches, different somatic complaints that we can have as well too. And just wanted to touch on for women, exploring what those barriers are and the message that we get from society, from many different cultures.
Yeah. So time might be a barrier. We know that women still nowadays, we work and then we also take care of the kids. It's still, the majority of the work is still on us. I think about little stuff where my husband is very involved and he tries to help as much as he can. And I say help and I shouldn't. He does what he's supposed to be doing. And there's little things where society is going to push back. Very simple. It's, we need a doctor's appointment for a specialist. And my husband called. He let them know, contact me. This is my number. This is my email. And they still called me. Even though he was the one that made the call and made sure that they had all the information, they still called me. And I told them, I'm away for work on a work trip. He's off this week. He has the time. Please call him. And they never did.
Interesting.
And it's society will push back on stuff like that because they're not used to that being at the forefront and doing what you're supposed to be doing. So even for me, like, the fact that I have to push back is still work while I'm already busy with my full-time job. They could have very well called that, but no, for some reason they chose to call me. And it happens all the time. Like, even if I put him number one to reach out, they'll still call mom. So it's very common. And even if you're not a parent like I am, you might be a daughter. And so again, it'll be you that probably takes most of the responsibility to take care of your parents. And so society itself is always still, I don't want to say always, because I'm hoping that it's going to change. But today they still see us very much as the primary caregiver. And so anything that has to do with family, your kids, your parents, friends, or whatsoever, we're always going to be like the first one to jump and do it because we've been taught to do it. I don't want to say it's their nature because men can learn to do it as well. It's just that it's been taught to us. And so we'll be the first one to jump and do it.
Right. So the expectation, especially, in Western societies, for women to be, what's nurturing, and the role still is very much the caregiver. And that can create burnout as well because we're continuing to juggle work and all those other responsibilities. It's been, I think, very challenging for as a couple to divide roles, right? There's always one person that's sort of designated as that caregiver, and not feeling able to not let go of that role or get permission to put yourself first. So the barriers are not feeling like there is time, putting everything else first. Any other barriers?
Well, I think there's also the guilt part or how it might be hard for us to rest. So there might be a guilt when you're trying to take a break and take time for yourself. What it is, I'm going to be away from the kids so I can take care of myself. There might be some guilt being away from the kids because I'm the mom and I should be there. There might be some guilt because, again, it wasn't taught for us and sometimes it's being seen as laziness. And so the moment that you sit down, you start thinking, there's probably something I could be doing, whether it's the dishes, that pantry that's probably a mess, some kids' work assignment or whatsoever. There's always a list of things to do that is never ending. And so the moment that you sit down, it might be hard to just take a break and take it for yourself because there's still like the mental load that keeps going. And so being able to just take a pause and try and not think about it is hard. But if we don't do it, we deplete. And because self-care has been because self-care has been commercialized in the way that we think it has to be like this bubble bath or the spa, that can be time consuming. And so how am I going to fit that into my schedule when there's so much to do? When the reality is that self-care can be done in very small pieces throughout your day so that you can keep going. It can be very small as taking a break, just shutting everything down, taking 5 minutes to breathe in silence. That can be a form of self-care, very quick, very small, 5 minutes for your day. And that can simply help to help you keep going. I think for me, sometimes I get overstimulated. And so that 5 minutes might be just enough for my brain to just slow down and be able to think more clearly and then keep going my task without feeling rushed or doing things fast and then doing them in a way that might not be helpful.
Right. It's really important to be able to take that pause to reflect and see what's going on for us internally, noticing if we're feeling overwhelmed and why, right? So it's helpful, whether it's doing a quick breathing app or going for a quick walk, something just to sort of be able to be more present and check in with yourself to see what you need in that moment. Sometimes we own other people's anxiety or stressors too, and don't even know it, right? So what would be some helpful self-care tips other than taking that time to pause and check in?
There's a lot that you can do. I think when I used to work in an office, there's some days that I was a bit more anxious than others. And so I would sometimes go and find a cubicle that would be for only one person so that I could shout everything out. There's the emails that keep coming and there's the people that come and talk to you. It and then there's the meetings. And so sometimes like just that day in the cubicle for me, I might look to others, although my coworkers never complain. But I sometimes worry like, do I look like I'm being rude to them because I'm like hiding in this cubicle? But that's what I needed at the time to bring that overstimulation down to take care of myself. And sometimes I couldn't find a cubicle, so often I would use my headphones that were supposed to be for call, but I would use them and then listen to my music. And then sometimes people wouldn't approach me because they thought that I was on a call until they would come and like knock on my shoulder, like, "Are you in a call?" I'm like, "No, it's okay. You can talk to me." I just need listening to my music. I know that some people can't work with music. For me, it helps me a lot. I love working and listening to my music. And if it's something that I don't really have to concentrate or it's Like sometimes I had to do data. So I would be able to do that while watching a show, for example, because some of it was very repetitive. And so again, just little ways to take care of myself. But then there's other ways. If you know that you're going to have a day that's like very charged and that may be more stressful, maybe pack your favorite lunch. That can be a way to take care of yourself. That can be something that brings down some of the stress when you're eating something that you enjoy, that you love, that will change your mood. It's very simple, very small, but it's a way to take care of yourself. It's taking care of your body, taking care of your mind, going for a walk, like you said. Sometimes you get overwhelmed with work, you get annoyed, there's so many emails or something that frustrated you. It's happened to me. Sometimes I just need to go for a walk. And then when I came back, I'm like, okay, I know what to do now. I can actually make a plan, write down what I need, and work, whether you're at, I say the office and I worked from home for a long time. So for me, I had to change my mentality where it's not because my computer is not open, that it doesn't mean that I'm not working. So often what would help me is that because I had like a long to-do list, I had to prioritize what is it that I want to do today, what's more important and what can wait. And so I didn't always open my computer at 9 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes I would just sit down and I like have an agenda with like a to-do list for every day. And it actually has like this little boxes on the side so I can actually check it when I'm done. So I would often, at 9 o'clock, I would sit on my desk and I would arrange my day. How am I going to do this? What's priority? What if I can get to something today? Can I put it for tomorrow, sometime in the week? And so sometimes there's tasks that I would put in for several days because I knew that maybe I wouldn't be able to finish it on that day, but I knew that I had time in the rest of the week to do it. So I wouldn't feel pressure to finish it on the day of. And so again, there's small things that you can do to make sure that you're coping throughout the day. And I say coping, it might be heavy, but sometimes when there's so much going on and everything on your life is go, 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 you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success, whatever way that means for you.
It's not just taking time to reflect, but then creating some sort of action plan and finding ways to execute things. I also find too ways to release that energy is helpful,
Mhm.
whether it's movement, can mention going for a walk. If it's, you work at an office or, another place and you can move around, take the stairs, go get a drink of water. That can be helpful. Get out of that space and be able to reflect. And it's great how you highlighted too, giving yourself permission that something may take a bit longer and setting up that time for it without having high expectations that might set yourself up for failure or feel self defeated.
Yes, I think the expectations is a big one. I know that some sense of sometimes I can be a perfectionist. And so I did struggle sometimes with feeling guilty because I didn't finish whatever work on time. And I've also had supervisors that have told me, like, you need to tell me what you need. If you don't tell me what you need, then I'm going to tell you what you need. But I've had that struggle sometimes to identify like what is my need, and that requires self-reflection, like how long do I actually need to do this. And then you need to feel comfortable and have a supportive employer where you can go and say, this is not going to take me a week, this might take me 2 to 3 weeks, so we can either take some stuff off my plate or we need to adjust the timeline.
And being okay with asking for help as well,
Mm.
right? So sometimes we take on so much or say yes to look like a team player, to be available and accessible, to be that hard worker, but then it can kind of be sabotaging when people don't know what we're juggling, how many, pieces there are that we're doing in projects. And then the expectation is still to have something completed on time. So that can be work against us because we get burnt out and then people are not satisfied. So it's also about setting that boundary as well, too.
Yeah. Boundaries in itself is a form of self care. And you have to know what your needs are so you can please those boundaries. But it definitely is also a form of self care. If you keep saying yes and you're stretching yourself out over and over again, there might be nothing left to deal or manage with. That in itself will be very hard because for someone that is, for example, like a people pleaser or somebody that always says yes or that wants to help, once you get to that stage where you can't do anything anymore, will be the harsher part, because not being able to do these things at all will bring up those high symptoms of depression, anxiety, or any other type of mental health. And then you'll go and hopefully have some therapy and go into them. But we want to like hopefully start working on those before they get high, and then it takes longer to recover from.
Right. It becomes a crisis before things are dealt with, right? And wanting to be more preventative and taking some of those helpful steps and doing some of those helpful self care tips. I'm wondering if you could share what some of the cultural challenges are or differences to self care practice.
Some cultural challenges, I think I'll go back to it wasn't taught for us. I think that nowadays, when I want to rest, for a long time, I had to trick my brain into seeing rest is productive so that I could take some of that guilt away and actually take care of myself. But it was like 5 minutes on the couch or me reading. Sometimes I will prefer an audiobook so that I can clean the house at the same time so I can feel less guilty around it. I can do something I like while I'm also taking stuff off the list. Um, but being able to recognize rest and self care as a need and a way to, again, keep being productive and keep doing the things that you need to do can be an obstacle in itself, because it wasn't taught to us. And maybe our parents nowadays, they still look at you and like, what do you mean you're going to go on vacation to a different country than ours and see the family? It can be the very small things like that, but and I think the guilt behind it is what needs to be addressed and worked with, rather than not doing the things that you want to do to feel joy and to feel better and to take care of yourself. And so sometimes we need to look at what is it that I can rest? What is it hard for me? And we need to be comfortable with whatever answer might come up. And it's not to judge our parents or anybody else in our family or even our own culture. It's just learning. And as human beings, we evolve. And so maybe that didn't work for our parents. That doesn't mean that we want to skip it. It's okay for us to change and to have different needs than they did and to build our lives and live it in a different way.
Right. So finding supports, if it's maybe not within the family, that's where a counselor could help just to process some of that guilt or whatever other feelings you may have around rest, relaxation, hobbies, self care, and finding ways to not get burnt out. And also modeling for maybe children or others too, a healthier way of coping with things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about my kids when it's bedtime. Sometimes they come down and they know that I'm watching TV, and so they come and Mama, I want to watch with you. Then I look at them, you never want to see the shows that I want to see during the day, but for some reason you want to see them now that it's bedtime. And so I often put down that boundary. This is my time. I want to be with myself. I want to watch my shows. Sometimes I let them come. And I have sometimes a tradition with my son that we like watching Harry Potter movies, maybe once a year when he's struggling to fall asleep. But I repeat it. I say it often when it's bedtime, like you're going to bed and I'm taking time for myself before I go to bed. So no, we're not going to be playing. No, we're not going to go watch TV together. Kids always have a bunch of excuses before going to bed. But then I always remind them, like, I promise you, once you go to bed, in a couple of minutes, you're going to fall asleep, because they always do. They fall asleep in a couple of minutes. They don't recognize that they're actually tired, but they usually fall asleep within a couple of minutes. And for me, it's really like, if it's been over an hour and they're still awake, okay, come and maybe this will help you unwind. But yeah, my kids know, like, when it's bedtime, Mama has her time for herself, and she's not really gonna care if I keep going down. But I'm hoping that will teach. I have two boys, so I'm hoping that will, if they go with a female partner, that they'll know that it's okay for her to have her time, and that she needs that time to unwind or to do whatever it is that she needs to do to recharge her battery.
Right. So modeling that adults relax and unwind and seek out pleasure as well too, right? And their own time versus maybe what wasn't modeled or shown before. Yeah, so that's really important for them to see that self-care being practiced by a caregiver as well. What are some ways that therapists can help around practicing self care? We sort of talked about counseling can help to process any feelings of guilt, any maybe if there's issues around boundaries and how to set that, any other ways that that therapy can help involving self care practices.
I think, like you mentioned, there's the guilt that we talk. There might be big guilt, there might be shame around it. And so we do want to process thought about where they come from, why they show up, and then see what way we can bring in self compassion. Because oftentimes, if we always saw resting or taking care of yourself as something to feel guilty or shamed about, we kind of need to rewire our brain to say that's not dangerous. That's actually very helpful. And so that self compassion will come in and will help you navigate it and see how you can apply it to yourself so that you can actually rest without having shame or guilt around it. That would be one thing. Like, we want to process the emotions. We want to help you recognize what your needs are because we all have different needs. And so self care will look different for everybody. We talk about, for example, spiritual health can be, yes, going to church, prayer, your community, but it can also mean something simple like reconnecting with your roots, having time with yourself. It's different for everybody. For me, often it's writing. That's where I get to hear myself and let the anxiety talk, have more emotions coming in and process them. And so it looks different for everybody. We want to find out like what is the self care that works for you and what are your needs. Because again, they may be different. And so depending on your needs, your self care would look different. And obviously, when you come into counseling, we create a safe space where you can say those things that you have maybe thought, but don't want to say it out loud, when they can actually be said and be heard without any judgment, where we can validate your emotions and help you navigate them and understand them instead of pushing them away.
Right. So counseling can help process feelings, maybe where patterns have come up around self care or the narrative around it and belief can help with looking at those pillars, like you've mentioned, and finding ways of coping and in continuing despite a busy schedule to have self care practices, which is important. And as well, that self compassion piece, I think we're always hard on ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we will always treat ourselves the harshest, then other people will. And so self compassion is something that has to be, we need to learn how to apply it to ourselves. Because again, uh, our brain might see it as a danger, and so we have to rewire it so that it doesn't see it as a danger anymore, but something it's a need. Like I said, that's why I had to trick my brain to rest is productive. Rest is not dangerous. It's okay. I will be fine. We need to rest to be productive. That's where the rewiring comes in. And then we want to apply self compassion so that we can learn how to not be harsh on ourselves with ourselves so that we can keep applying that self care, not just for a day or two, but long term.
Right. Rest can feel so uncomfortable for people, right? Along with boredom of,
Mm.
needing to do something, that action piece. And that's what I like about introducing mindfulness because it's about just being, right? Just being present, being in the moment, being in nature, whatever that looks like, and feeling grounded and anchored. And I think that can be really uncomfortable. So counseling can help, work through that uncomfortableness. A lot of great areas we touched on self care today. Jessica, I was just wondering how people can connect with you or reach you online if they're interested in either maybe working with you on self care or learning more about how you can help in juggling different cultures, learn about any other services that you have.
Yeah. And there's my website with raicesflourishcounseling.ca. There's also my Instagram, which is at raices period flourish period counseling. And then there's my TikTok, which is at raices period flourish. So different social media and my website. I hope you found me, and I hope that you reach out and that we can talk about it, process, pack. I'd be very excited to listen to you and do the work.
Yes, it's really important. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm, excited to learn about your services and supports as well. I think it's so important to have services in the community that help with, people from different cultures, backgrounds, and walks of life. So I'm glad to have you on today. Thanks again.
Thank you, Serene.